Hi, I'm Meta Spencer. Today we're going to do a little strategizing. We're going to talk with some friends about how we can maybe have an impact in the world as we talk about our various social issues. For me, it's 6 or 9 different social issues that might be disastrous for the whole planet. Everything from war and weapons to AI to climate to famine, etc. But I'm speaking today with friends who are all engaged, particularly with the issue of climate change and the need to influence public awareness so that people know that it's not just a matter of greenhouse gases emission, but that we need to actually consider different new technologies that will cool the planet in other ways, including by increasing the reflectivity of the planet in various ways. So I want to talk to my friends, and let me begin by saying that the particular reason these people will be with me is that I am trying to make a transition. I'm 94, and I definitely need to have a plan in place for succession. And I do have some people who are willing to share the burden. And these are friends of mine who are especially willing to do it with respect to global warming issues. And these people all belong to the organization called the Healthy Planet Action Coalition. And pretty soon, we're going to be having a regular show in the forum series, Project Save the World's forums, held maybe twice a month or so, and organized by the Healthy Planet Action Coalition. And Robert Tulip is here, and he's going to be the final authority on what issues and guests we invite. And I will, for the time being, share co-hosting with Aria McKenna, whom I have picked because she's sparkly and because she's very knowledgeable about some of the technologies for changing public opinion that not everybody has experience with. She's an actress and a screenwriter, and has just developed a pilot for a series on a TV show or something about climate change, which would be a lovely 1 year long or 2 or 5 year long show if we can get it produced. And my friend Brian von Herzen is in Australia. By the way, Robbie Tulip and Brian are both in Australia, and it must be late night for them or early morning.
No, it's 7:30 and 8 o'clock in the morning.
Morning, all right. And Aria and I are both in North America. She's in Florida. But Brian is somebody who very often pops up on my screen. And he is a specialist in climate change, running the Climate Foundation. Is that the name of your organization, Brian? Yes. And he is doing wonderful experimental work in things like setting up farms for kelp farming in the ocean and so on, which just have great potential. So these are my friends, and they will be easing into more responsibility for producing the shows that we make in the future. Now, I want us to spend most of the agenda today considering what kinds of technologies are not only best for solving climate problems, but what are the best technologies for informing the public and changing public opinion and awareness of climate as well as other issues. Because we have various methods that we stick to, and I don't think they're all optimum for having an impact on public opinion. So I think we want to have a conversation about what works and what our goals should be. Should we be trying to change the opinions or make the elite scientists and experts more aware of and aligned on policy goals and policies? Or should we be focusing, trying to influence general public opinion, which may have more impact on what the governments actually decide to do? And depending on which of these goals we decide that we want to focus on, it would make sense to change our or use different platforms and different communication strategies to achieve them both. So let's have that conversation now. I think, frankly, I think Robbie's main focus is on trying to make sure that the people who really are knowledgeable about climate change are up to date with each other and keep informed about all their breaking news and their new decisions and discoveries. People like himself and Brian, who know a lot more of the numbers and acronyms and things than I do, and they have a sort of an in-group conversation, but that I think Robbie would believe that they have more impact on what the government decides to do. Whereas I think Aria and I may have more interest in how to change the awareness in the general public. And that would probably require different platforms. So Robbie, you want to take it from there, and let's just see what we all think about this issue.
Thanks so much for that introduction, Meta. I think that you've set out the context really well. And initially, I just want to honour your amazing contribution, the wonderful platform that you have built with Project Save the World, and the clear vision that you have enunciated, and the whole process of polite, long-form conversations with people who know what they're talking about to try to get information out. And I think one of the things that we're experiencing is the frustration of seeing that climate change is a real crisis for our planet, and but the messaging about what we can do about it is just not getting out either to the general public, to through media, even within the expert communities. Often the messaging is really weak, and let alone governments, they just don't have a clue. We've all been involved, as you mentioned, with the Healthy Planet Action Coalition for some years, and we have a shared view that we support a triad approach to climate policy, and that is reduce, remove, reflect. So reducing the emissions of greenhouse gases is just absolutely critical to preventing dangerous global warming and all of the impacts of extreme weather and biodiversity loss and systemic disruption. But it's not enough. Emission reduction alone has become a sort of mantra within the climate action movement. That is, people. That's how we characterise it. Because people are so fixated on cutting emissions that they don't realise that the climate problem is actually bigger than just cutting emissions alone. That there's this whole legacy problem of past emissions which are warming the planet, and then there's this serious problem of the feedbacks from those emissions, that our planet has got darker. Our planet is now 2% darker. That is, we reflect 2% less sunlight back to space than we did just 25 years ago at the turn of the millennium. And so, this loss of the planetary reflectivity is actually causing more warming than the new emissions that we emit. And what that means is that if we keep the current policy of just trying to focus on emissions, it's not only that we're banging our head against a brick wall, because as we saw at the COP meeting in Brazil, fossil fuels didn't even get mentioned in the communique, but also that we're missing the biggest part of the picture, which is the reflection of sunlight back to space, which is known as albedo, which is a word that I really focus on, but it just doesn't get out into the public. Most people have never even heard of it. And so it's technical, but it needs to be put into simple terms. It needs to get into the media. It needs to get into the communication channels that that lots of people see, so that we can start to change the conversation about climate change and start to implement some real solutions. So, yeah, I live in Australia. I worked for 30 years with the Australian Agency for International Development in government. I also have a big interest in religion and I suppose progressive Christianity. So I chair the World Student Christian Federation for the Asia Pacific region, and so those conversations, what is the message? How do we get it out? Those are things that I so value our opportunity to explore.
So what we want to talk about is how to do it, how to have the impact that we need. Now, I think I kind of got a little shocked the other day because I asked AI, give me a cost benefit analysis of the different platforms that are available digitally to people like myself. And how effective are they in changing public opinion? Because my priority is to influence the general public. Well, it turns out that what I do is almost no value whatever in changing public opinion. No, directly, because nobody watches us except the people who are already intelligently, well-informed, really smart on the subject. So experts who talk to each other on the show benefit from the talk. And the experts are the ones who actually watch the show more than anybody else. So I'm convinced that what I'm doing with this forum is of value, but it's of value only in informing already well-informed people even better, so that we boost our awareness of each other and what we're doing and what the news discoveries are and so on. But in terms of influence public opinion, no. And what I found is there are two things that will make a difference. The cheapest way is TikTok. Like a few seconds of a little clip showing something, and you can have a huge impact pretty good impact with millions of people. But it's not very informative. It's not the way to get brilliant. In fact, I think it's kind of, I feel, kind of loss of prestige if I descend to using a method of that kind. I'm not very keen on it, but I'm going to try it because I think we need to. But the really impactful thing that has a huge impact, if we could afford it, would be TV series dramas. If we could make a show like, say, The West Wing or Northern Exposure, or I don't know what other shows are available that illustrate how, let's say, a government should be solving its problems instead of how to kill each other with, crime shows and so on. If we could make a series like that, and get it watched on national TV or international, it would be hugely impactful. And movies are being used now, like there's a new one out now called House of Dynamite or something like that. I haven't seen it, but it is about nuclear weapons and the dangers thereof. And it tells a story. It's one-shot deal. Well, I don't think you have quite as much impact with a one-shot movie as you do with a series that goes on for 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 years even, where people fall in love with the characters and they follow them and they become extremely emotionally engaged with the characters and their life stories and so on. So those are very, very important. But of course, it's almost totally impossible for folks like us to produce such a thing, at least until now. And let's talk about that in a few minutes, because I have a crazy idea that I want to promote for that. But let me turn to Aria, because Aria has already been. She and I think alike, and she's been producing and writing scripts for a show which she's now peddling, I think, trying to get somebody to produce it. Tell me about your drama and why you think that would be something great if you could get it produced and get the audience.
Yeah, no, thank you, Meta. So my TV series that I have been working on for some time, but I feel like it's finally ready for some, to get some significant support from some producers and hopefully get a showrunner on board. It's called Revolution Earth. And it centers around, it starts with an inexperienced journalist mom who is torn between a charming fossil fuel lobbyist and a passionate environmental activist. And she has to find the power to awaken a movement while taking down a dangerous web of corruption. So basically, we've got suspense, we've got mystery involved, we've got some very compelling characters that I believe a lot of people will be able to identify with. Mm-hmm. I personally love the central character and the fact that she's a mom that ends up driving her throughout the story. But she really starts off as a conservative, traditional wife. So, I want to tell stories that people can identify with, mm-hmm. and that they will be able to, grow and evolve as the characters grow and evolve. The three central characters have these arcs where they all have something to learn, mm-hmm. and they all play a role in this massive evolution that we all need on this planet, because we've got to awaken the kind of changes that would make the kind of difference we actually need to make right now. And that's going to be a really tall order. Mm-hmm. And so
if I'm understanding you, your character starts off with one point of view or one life situation, and through a series of shows, like how many, 10 shows or
more?
Good question.
I've got the season one, I've got the arc of the season one, but then I want the characters to basically go on a journey around the world, mm-hmm. so that people can really see in their living rooms the kind of impacts that are happening right now around the world.
Well, now, according to what the research shows, if you start off with the character being something like a hugely popular point of view, the common sense, usual, maybe uninformed opinion of the population that you're trying to address in their own language, by the way, and then you have things happen to them that force them to change their opinions or their solutions to their own problems over a period of time, then your friends, if viewers love them and become identified with them and care about them, they will go through this experience with them too and wind up where you want them to wind up in terms of public opinion. So this has been shown to have an enormous impact. And there's a guy in, I think, Vermont, named Bill Ryerson, who runs something called the Population Media Center. And he makes what he calls soap operas, radio and television soap operas that run in third world countries, excuse the expressions, some people don't like that word, different countries around the world, and that have been shown to have enormous impact on public opinion and public behavior. Things like, HIV, precautionary measures that people do to avoid catching AIDS and whatnot, or public education, getting old people to sign up for adult education courses, or trying to reduce the prevalence of child marriage in countries that are still practicing that, and so on. So you can measure the impact, and it really is the most effective thing that a person can do. And you've got a series of shows ready to go if you could just get a producer, and that's the hitch. Good luck with it.
Thank you. No, I'm excited about beginning these conversations. I mean, it's been a real journey for me. Really learning the art of creating a pilot.
Mm-hmm.
And it has evolved over some time. I initially co-created this with Jeff Abigov, who was a writer-producer on Cheers, Roseanne, Two and a Half Men. And so, he came from a particular background that had a particular style. Mm-hmm. And so it's really evolved a lot since then. And it's got, TV has changed over the decades. So, I've had an opportunity to really live with these characters and to observe the world we're living in and to evolve the story in reflection of how our world has evolved, to keep it as modern as possible. And I'm really happy with where it's at right now, but it's like, it takes a lot of studying of the art of storytelling, and then the art of storytelling in this particular genre, and the genre, and then the actual, a TV pilot versus other episodes or screenplay writing and all of that.
I think that is the probably the only real technological production level glitch. I can see how we could start making YouTube TV series ourselves, just using cameras that are available, like the one we're using right now, and in our own apartment building. I could get the stories set by people who live in the apartment building, and we meet at the mail room, and we meet in people's down at the swimming pool and in the garage, and people that have things going on there. So I could imagine doing that, but getting somebody who could write the plot and write the screen for free. I could recruit my friends to be the actors. I could follow them around with the camera, or 3 or 4 cameras, and splice it together afterward. I know how to make a movie now. I sat on the set of I spent about 500 hours on a TV set as they produced 2 different seasons of a show called Street Time about 20 years ago. So I know how to do it, and I could do it at hardly any more cost than it costs me right now to produce what I'm doing right now. But I couldn't write the script, and I could get my friends to act for free, but I don't know how I could get anybody to spend months and months writing scripts for a show. That's the hang up. Anyway, what do you think, Aria? Is that crazy?
I went to acting school for a couple of years and then continued to train for many years after that, and then got into theater and then film and TV. We all come from our own perspective. So for me, I always want to see like actors who can really take that on. I also taught voiceovers for like over a decade in New York. And I would have people who had legitimate acting backgrounds come in to learn voiceover, and they had an evolution of that skill set too. Some of them were naturals behind the mic. Others had old theater habits that they had to kick to learn that particular genre of acting. So, I've got that perspective of wanting to always have something be at that level of professionalism. But that being said, there are all kinds of things these days. Like you said, a lot of things have changed. YouTube has opened things up. There are people I see doing content on YouTube sometimes that doesn't have that same level of professionalism you might want to see or expect in, mainstream streaming TV, but that still gets a cult following or, gets some interest. But I do.
Well, I know it makes sense if you can afford to pay people. You obviously want to pay people, but I'm trying to figure out, can we do anything using this, what it turns out is the most persuasive kind of medium of communication that has the biggest impact on public opinion? Can we do that with the zero resources we have? We have to spend our own money to actually do it. And I think we can do it. And I talked to Richard Stratton, who was the producer of this show that I sat in on, the Street Time, and he said that the first movie he ever made didn't have a single paid actor. And it was a wonderful movie. I saw it. It was a great movie. So it is possible, although a hell of a lot more risky, to bring people in who have no experience in acting and see if you can get them to perform. And so I just want to experiment. I'd love to get somebody willing to try it.
I think it'd be really great to build some collaborations, because you've got groups out there that do readings on a regular basis, who already have actors who are just, they just want to read, because it's like workshopping something. It can be fun to gather a bunch of actors together to read.
They can't, because they're in a union. And if they act without being paid, terrible things will happen to them.
I've been there. So yeah, so I'm just thinking about the different mediums. One of the ones was audio, and it is cheaper to produce something that is audio. And we were talking about, Brian had mentioned audio podcasts, but narrative audio podcasts.
Okay.
And there are other organizations out there like the Hollywood Climate Summit and other kinds of groups that are specifically focused on narrative, and they work with writers and they help teach writers about how to integrate climate into their writing. So I'm just saying that there are collaborations that might be worth considering and gathering resources and finding ways to get the right people together, so that not only do you have a good arc of storytelling, but you also have some actors on there who are really able to breathe life and authenticity into the work, and with that climate storytelling in mind. And a lot of those organizations that are currently working to integrate more climate into storytelling don't necessarily have the perspective that we have, though. And I don't think I really want to be cautious here, but I mean, I feel like right now, a lot of scientists aren't communicating the holistic strategy that HPAC is supporting, because the science has changed. It started off where, yes, if you were to just drastically reduce emissions, we could have hit this off, at the head, or cap, whatever the phrase is. But right now we've gone past a certain point, and we're already, breaching these tipping points that are quite terrifying. And so it's interesting, because one of the things that I was thinking about, I think Robbie described what the triad is very well. And one of the things I always like to think about it as is a holistic strategy to restore a safe climate. And when you talk about influencing people, you also need a holistic strategy for influence because there are these different target demographics. So I just thought that was interesting how the concept of holistic communication strategies to support a holistic climate strategy that is needed at this point.
Okay, I think you've just changed my whole opinion. And that is that now I believe, one of the things that Bill Ryerson does is soap operas that are broadcast on radio. Now if we can't do a video series because that's too ambitious, and we could probably do podcast narratives. So take your show, let's say, well, I won't use up yours because you might still be able to produce it. But the idea of having somebody do script writing for a whole series of dramas that will take place over 6 or 8 months or 2 or 3 years, in which people change their points of view over time, etc., as an audio podcast and just broadcast them that way, that might work. But again, that puts the ball back in the court of finding people who can spend a lot of time, because it's very demanding, to write the scripts for something of that kind. And that is really a challenge. Robbie, I shut you off. Please speak.
I was going to say, Aria made a really good point about the need for the message to be really sharply honed and then put into a mass media attractive format. But we've got Brian here, who's got such amazing expertise on this, and so I'm hoping that we can bring Brian into this conversation.
Yes, for a few minutes. I'm a little late for my next call, but I'm very happy to help with getting the message out and really articulating the key challenge and opportunity that we actually respond in a timely way to the climate crisis.
Well, tell me what your own take on it. What do you think is worth investing in, our time, if not our money?
Well, I think there's a huge opportunity to reach across the aisle, so to speak, and to help people understand what climate disruption and the extreme weather will do to their families, will do to their properties, and will do to their children's futures. And by really articulating this just in terms of weather extremes, I think I read just this week there was an emergency forum put on by the UK government, and some really articulate UK professors spoke on it. And one woman, this morning I was just watching the YouTube, she said, the extreme weather we're having is the mildest weather that we're going to have for the rest of our lives. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's this kind of messaging, maybe focusing on weather extremes. In fact, I've been working on a concept for a website on weather moderation as a way to really frame it. How do we manage this? We have a half a century track record of monitoring the weather in places like Los Angeles with the cloud seeding programs, etc. How do we moderate the weather during the extreme weather situations that we're encountering?
Hey, I have an idea. There's an outfit in LA, and connected with the USC and Annenberg or something like that. But at any rate, its mission is to be available to give movie and TV script writers information about medical matters. Because in a lot of shows, they will be talking about somebody with some new disease or something happened, and they don't know, to be accurate, what to say about it. So they call up this outfit, and these people have experts who will give them all the information they need, and they insert that into shows. Somebody comes in and says, "Oh, I just got my driver's license today," and then you have a conversation about, well, did you sign the card that gives your body authorizes them to use your body if you're killed in a crash? No, I didn't do that. I don't want to have any. And so you have then a conversation about what will happen if you are killed, and that they're not going to take your parts before you're really good and dead, and things like that. So they put all of this, and what, somebody else has got some new heart disease or dementia or something, and they give them exactly the information to put in correctly. And it turns out one woman who was, I think, Donna Shalala, who was maybe the ministry Secretary of Health at the time or something in the U.S., said that most people get their basic medical information from TV dramas. That's where they get the information that they act on the basis of. So let's set up an organization that will provide accurate information about weather and climate, because people in these shows are always going to need to know something accurate about, and they're going to have talking about whether it's raining or snowing, and what does that mean? So let's set something up that they can call and talk to you, Brian, and get the truth. How about it?
Okay, that sounds great.
One of the amazing things, Meta, is that Hollywood is centrally placed to take a lead on this. And I'll tell you why. Because Los Angeles has lost 99% of its offshore kelp in I think it's the San Bernardino Channel.
Northern California, actually.
I'm sorry, Northern California. My
apologies, I'm overdue on another call, but I'm really looking forward to this thread in our next conversation.
Okay.
Thanks so much. Bye, Brian, if you have to go.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah. Okay, go on, Bobby.
Okay, so, well, California, the issue is that the cloud banks in the Pacific Ocean off California are one of the really key problems for climate change, because those cloud banks are dissolving under global warming. And if we were able to protect those cloud banks in some way, that has such a dramatic influence on the climate and weather for California. Like, it was the collapse of those cloud banks that, so they've, what's happened is that if you fly across the Pacific, then a large part of it, and also in the Atlantic Ocean, but in the off the North American west coast, you just fly over low clouds the whole way for a long time, and those clouds reflect sun back to space. But those cloud banks are getting destroyed by global warming. They're letting the sun through into the ocean. That's causing a feedback. That was a really big factor in allowing the Los Angeles fires. And so getting that sense that there is action that California could take to lead the world on repairing the climate and preventing future catastrophes like the Los Angeles fires is a really interesting message, given the infrastructure for media that Southern California has.
Okay.
I've often wondered whether marine cloud brightening would be very ideal off the Northern California coast. And I find it very complicated, of course, by the kind of, the climate conspiracies about weather modification. And every time there's a flood, people are worried that it's caused by, interfering with the clouds and these
chemtrails, those sorts of
fears that have been promoted in response to people trying to correct weather imbalances that have been created by the climate crisis. But I have wondered whether marine cloud brightening would be really.
I think you need, or Robbie needs to explain what marine cloud brightening is, because
Yes.
not all we're reaching a few people who are not experts.
So scientists over the last 30 years have identified that the reflection by clouds of sunlight back to space is one of the key factors in the stability of the climate. If we can make clouds over the oceans reflect a bit more sunlight, then that will slow down global warming, and it will give us time and to address the much more difficult problem of carbon action, because we've got such strong barriers to doing anything about emissions, and we're facing a range of tipping points. So marine cloud brightening was developed by John Latham and Stephen Salter in the UK, and also there was a big conference about it in Northern California at Asilomar, I believe it was, in about 2010. And the idea is that if you just inject salt, ordinary sea salt, into ocean clouds, the problem is, though, that what you need to do is you need to inject the salt by making the salt particles really tiny. And so if you can spray really tiny particles of sea salt into ocean clouds on a big scale, then that has a major protective benefit. And here in Australia, we've got a really big research program to protect the Great Barrier Reef, where the coral is bleaching. And the coral reefs of the world are at the point of extinction under climate change. It is terrible, and that message is not properly understood. But it's hard. California is the ideal place in the world to start it. And the challenge is to get that message out, because the University of Washington in Seattle is one of the world leaders in this whole technology. They tried to do a preliminary field study on it in near San Francisco, and they encountered a really major public backlash because they hadn't prepared the community properly by telling the story about why this is needed. They sort of proceeded on a scientific basis rather than a public messaging basis. And so there's a really important story out there that the benefits of this just totally massively outweigh any risks. The stories that people have raised about risks are just not correct.
Mm-hmm.
And so, changing the public narrative on this marine cloud brightening agenda is really essential. Like we need to move from the modelling and intellectual debate in scientific papers into mass media, into just engaging the debate with the public, into convincing people. Like we have a story in Australia that California is always 10 years ahead of us. And, California is a great test bed for innovation and new ideas. But it seems that the public in California is a little bit behind on this climate change question, because there they are, the best place in the world to repair the marine clouds, and they can't get the message out into the public space. So there's the technology still needs some development, because getting the salt particles small enough and even enough. And
part of I think it's worth mentioning that part of the reason the size of the salt particles matters is that what you want is to create clouds that are whiter rather than darker. And
That's
the
right.
whitening of the clouds, just a little bit of whitening, has a big impact because it reflects much more. Dark clouds mean it's going to rain or something. And
the sunlight.
The dark clouds are made of heavier, bigger particles. That's why they're darker. So, but the challenge is to get nozzles that will produce fine enough particles of salt water to do the job and really whiten the clouds, as I understand.
Not the one technology, and it may be that there are different technologies, but the money has not been invested in, because because there isn't the public pressure. Like if we saw this as a moonshot, like if a US president were to say, by the end of this decade, like President Kennedy said in 1962, by the end of this decade, then we will have we will deploy technologies to re-brighten the earth. Then it would happen. And so, we could repair. Like, I think it's unlikely that President Trump would express that message, but it illustrates, the barriers that we face to getting a sensible understanding of the strategic security stability problems that are.
Well, Gavin Newsom might be up for it if we just got to him. And that's where I think, I know I once visited that outfit where they answer questions for script writers about medical issues. And I think I probably could call that woman who heads it, I can't remember her name, but say, hey, how about who would be interested in setting up a branch plant like yours, only dealing with climate issues? And tell me how did you do it? It was set up through, I think, University of Southern California and the Annenbergs, who do that kind of funding. So wouldn't that be good? And she might be able to give us a tip on how we might get something like that set up. Okay?
I think that's brilliant, Meta.
Okay. I'll try to call it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I liked the study that you shared with us earlier also talked about key talking points and how important it was to talk more about. I wish I could remember all of the takeaways. I know one of them was the word innovation, that when you use that, people tend to respond well to it. And, somehow when you talk about saving the world, people don't pay as much attention. But, I know that I don't remember whether resilience was one of those or what.
I don't remember.
Do you want me to put the document up on the screen?
Well, I think you can, yes. And I'm not sure it's in that document, but there may be another one that she's referring to. I sent you 2 or 3 things. We may need to, when I edit it, I'll take out whatever effort it takes to find the document we want. Okay, now let's see. Oh, yes, here we go. Okay. So this is, by the way, friends, this is setting up to show that's the machine thinking to itself. And then here we have, if you scroll down, that's still the back room. Now here we go. This is where I call her she, but it's really a machine. Where is this? Format. The highest effectiveness would be TV dramas, movies, and radio soap operas. That's where we could come in. We might be able to do that with a good person who's a writer. And transportation theory, I don't remember what that is, but soap operas. Now here's a reference to the Population Media Center, where it's Bill Ryerson's outfit. And the TV film, there was one, the Day After Tomorrow had a huge impact just because almost everybody in North America watched it. I remember I was on a plane coming back from Russia when it was playing, and I've never seen it. But anyway, scroll on down because there's a question about what kind of impact. It doesn't say, but we want to okay, something about boomerang. If you get preachy or you just scare people, especially with public service announcements, those things that they put on as spots between TV shows and so on, for a couple of minutes, they'll tell you about whatever's going on in your town. But it doesn't work. It's not a good idea. And in fact, it could have, here the public fear-oriented public service announcements are dangerous because they just scare people. Okay. Aria, why don't you talk about this? Explain what we're seeing. I would just say
one of the things I noticed a little further up too, they were talking about stories that focus on human resilience as opposed to focusing on that sort of dystopian fear-based, impacts, which I mean, I'm all for that and very much in alignment with what I'm trying to do. I think it's important to balance that out though, because I mean, people love thrillers and suspense, and honestly, there's a lot of TV shows out there that are rather dark. But when it comes to climate, I think that is how we turn so many people off. And it's these stories that I see the other side say, oh, they thought we were, the world was going to end by now. And it's like, that's not what we're saying. We're saying if you don't change your behaviors, these are going to be the impacts. And they don't understand it because they get so like, oh, I don't want to hear that. So it's really important. And I think that, this conversation we're having about marine cloud brightening absolutely fits into that too, when it comes to an innovation to help us become more resilient while we're actually working to solve the problem. I didn't see what else was on there. I know there were three things that had stood out to me earlier when I was looking at that document, but I don't remember all of them. But the focus on innovation, I also thought was important. Could you scroll down a little bit more? One of the things I found interesting too, how they were talking about the short form narratives and TikTok videos and things like that, which of course is very challenging for us when we're talking about something that really has nuance and the technical aspects of trying to say what should be a better global strategy. We can have really long, in-depth conversations about why the common narrative about what we do to solve the climate crisis is no longer enough. But I think that can be.
Well, here you're making an interesting point, what he's got outlined here. People don't want to believe the message about the problem because they dislike the solution. That is government regulation and taxes. So we got to think of a way to sell this as something other than government project. Innovation, call it market opportunities, or energy independence. These are more effective than framing them as saving the planet, which is my angle. And also, here's another point they make, that rather than fact-checking misinformation after it spreads, which is called debunking, a University of Cambridge study shows that pre-bunking is better. You warn people about manipulation tactics used by climate deniers, and that is more effective. And you can do this, it says, with things like TikTok or YouTube Shorts. Very cost-effective medium for doing pre-bunking. Okay, now what would we do by way of, that's an interesting challenge, Robbie. Let's say we want to write a script for a pre-bunking message. What would that look like?
Well, I think there's such an exciting opportunity to pitch marine cloud brightening as a necessary innovation that has just got major benefits. And I wanted to also get back to Brian's point about reaching across the aisle, because there are really big industries that face a lot of commercial risk from climate change, and especially the insurance industry, but also others. And so there's the potential to build support for the research into marine cloud brightening off the California coast as something that would be really beneficial and helpful and popular. And so, I think your idea about somehow getting to Gavin Newsom to support that, to see that we're in a bit of despair at the moment after the Belém COP30, with it just saying that it didn't even want to talk about fossil fuels. It just makes it so hard to make cutting emissions the sort of inspiration that people need. So a sort of strategic pivot to say uh, okay, it's pretty tough to make much progress on emissions, but here's another way that we can protect the climate for young people that can be really effective. And then I think that the pre-bunking agenda feeds into that because we've had some pretty crazy people out there. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene comes to mind as somebody who's really supported conspiracy theories, and we can see that the climate denial is just really unscientific, and it does involve conspiracy theories that are just wrong, and so yeah, that's some thoughts for me. But I think Aria might like to add.
Yeah, no, I just I was scanning through this. I really love talking about saving money, for instance. I mean, this is one of the things, honestly, I've been working on. I'm trying to start a podcast myself, and I wanted to put together a takeaway that someone could have with a list of things that they can do that would help them save money. That's also good for their health and good for the planet, because oftentimes all of those things work together and we don't have enough conversations about that. But when you are reducing your energy use, you're saving money. When you're reducing food waste, you're saving money. And all of these things are huge for the planet, and they're, better for our health when we're having heavy, lots of veggies in our diet. That's great for our health. And cheaper to buy veggies. It's, if you grow your own food, that's also another way to save money.
And when we rebrighten the planet, we reduce the risk and the cost of major disasters, and that saves a lot of money.
Yes.
Well, look, here, let's focus on insurance, because it's very apparent that the insurance industry should be out there promoting climate repair technologies like marine cloud brightening and so on, and they're not doing it. They're just thrown up their hands and say they don't have any impact. They're going to have to go out of business, so they're gradually making things insurance so expensive that people can't afford it, and they will go broke. Well,
let's make that a big topic for our next conversation.
A big point about getting people, getting information to people saying, well, how much is your house insurance costing you? And why don't you get to your insurance agent and say, God damn it, why don't you change your policy and press the government to start funding and supporting research on marine cloud brightening, let's say, something like that. Would that work, Robbie? You think? Obviously,
absolutely. Well, I would like to see broader, just albedo accord as way, like the Montreal Protocol fix the ozone layer. We need an albedo accord to fix the albedo layer, and so it's clouds and ice and snow and aerosols, like they're all in decline, and so we need to change the public narrative, and we need to bring some of the affected industries on board. Just like the Montreal Protocol did, and with a focus on albedo, recognizing that carbon is the big agenda, but that we can actually make some progress on restoring sunlight reflection.
I just want to say, Robbie, that, as much as you and I have a tendency to go back and forth, the holistic strategy is so important to me. I think it's so important from that broad perspective of bringing all strategies to the table to have that holistic approach. But I want to say, I love the simplicity of this is something that we have not had enough conversations about, where so many people in the climate movement don't understand the interconnectedness with the climate crisis we're in and albedo and how much that has amplified warming. And so I love that potential of being able to reach people with a new message that is clear, especially if we're talking about short videos, short content. I do think that there's something in that specificity that if more people could understand what albedo is and why it's important and what we can do about it, that could really change.
I think he's made an amendment in my proposal, if I'm understanding him. I said, listen, people, you've got insurance. Get your insurance company to press the government to do something. Now, I mean, what Robbie is saying, instead of saying press the government to support research on marine cloud brightening, we could tell them, get the government or anybody else to work toward an albedo treaty, or whatever you call that.
I call it an albedo accord.
Yeah, a convention on albedo. And so that, I think that's a constructive change. It'd be better than what I was suggesting. I mean, is that what you meant, Robbie? I think I took.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm due for something else now, so I've really loved this conversation. You're fantastic, Meta and Aria. I really look forward to working with you closely.
Well, it's time for me to go. Time for us to wind this up, but it's been such fun. I just love hanging out with you guys, and I'm delighted that I'm going to have more opportunity to hang out with you in the future. So we're going to make a great team, I'm sure. So
Thanks,
onward. All right. See you again soon, I hope. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.